we're just kind of going with the flow. And as soon as you realize that life is not forever and that
Mhm.
we have this limited time, the end goal is what? It's happiness. Welcome to the Love Atlas, where we dive deep and we connect with ourselves and others around us. Each episode is filled with thought leaders, experts, and everyday people like you and I, and with profound insights. Each person has a story. So today we have Stephanie Suskind, and she also has a podcast of on self care and personal growth. So Stephanie, let's dive right in. I know you're super into fashion as well, so tell us all about yourself.
Hi, so thank you for having me. This is really fun. I've been on this
Ooh,
journey for quite a while of kind of self-discovery, and I think it's a great conversation because I think that that's sort of what you're trying to dive into with all of this.
yeah,
Um, I'm definitely into fashion, but you know what? It's funny, like there's so many sides to fashion. Like I also think that fashion is a terrible thing. It's funny because we're changing seasons at the moment and it's going
yeah,
into fall and I'm on my phone and I've already done like most of my fall shopping and I see Instagram and I'm scrolling and all I'm wanting to do is go shopping again. So it's really terrible because it's like on one hand, I want to see it all. I want to see like the current trends and the changes and it's
right.
fun. But
Yeah,
the other end of that is like, where do you draw the line,
yeah,
right? It's fun to watch, but is that all I'm actually doing? Or am I just giving myself
yeah.
shopping anxiety or spending unnecessary money? So it's very annoying. When I blasted with a feed of all the other things I forgot about or didn't see yet, I know, oh, wow, I like that. Perfect. I'll add that to the basket too. So before you know it, you're at
Yeah.
triple the price of what you were originally going to be spending. So I think it's just like you're bombarded with stuff. I don't know that it's necessarily comparison, but I do think
Right.
we all are doing that too.
Yeah,
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 I'm guilty of only showing the good stuff. Absolutely. But I do
yeah,
think social media is a really valuable tool if we use it properly. So
definitely.
there's good and bad, right?
Yeah. So how do you navigate through those challenges when you're online and you're buying all these things? Like, how do you catch yourself and how do you stop yourself from doing it?
I don't, sadly. I will admit I have the biggest addiction or problem that I have is breaking my addiction to
Yeah,
shopping. And it's an
yeah,
addiction. So let me tell you how I kind of got started here with
yeah,
social media, and
yeah.
it'll paint, I think, a better picture. So I've always been a consumer of social media, always. And during COVID, like a lot of us, I started doing like the talking head videos. And it was really for business purposes. I was doing like some marketing and sales assisting for my husband's company because it was everyone around me or all of us, we were all learning something new. We were trying to transition into this new online world.
Hmm.
So I got a hang of that then, but I was doing it for things that they weren't important to me. So it kind of, when you're doing social media and you're talking about things, or you're doing a podcast and it's about something you don't necessarily care about, it's really hard to keep doing it. So I
Absolutely.
think it was a year and a half. I got a Forbes feature, which was really fun and random. But I think I burned out. And so I just kind of went silent on social media and I was a consumer again. And this was all on LinkedIn, by the way. And so I spent like 2 years just trying to figure out where I was going to go in life. Like a lot had changed. I'm an investor. I left my corporate job a long time ago. So I think maybe I thought I'd be doing that for a while. And then I got married, and my husband and I were just comfortable, and I started shopping. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm going to give back to the community. I want to find some philanthropy that I'm really into. And I did that, but it also meant I needed to wear a new outfit to every event that I was going to. So
Yeah.
it was unfulfilling because it was more superficial than I would like to admit.
Yeah.
And I created a shopping addiction. So I've been working on breaking that. And I unfortunately do not have any tips on how to balance at the
Yeah.
moment.
No, I absolutely love the honesty. So has that come in between, would you say, your relationship with your husband?
Sure.
So,
My
you know,
husband wanted
especially
to
when it comes to
murder me.
finance is huge. So tell us a
Finance
little
is
bit about
huge.
that.
My husband wanted to murder me. It definitely was the main thing that we fought about for like the first year of our relationship. But I think it was also for me, it was more because it was an understanding that I was trying to fill a void. Right. And
Yeah.
so looking for something meaningful during that kind of 2 year hiatus, I was finding or trying to find philanthropy. Right. So, like,
Mhm.
what organization would I get involved with and kind of dedicate my time to? And so it was really just like women writing checks and kind of flexing their financial status and muscles. And so that made it, my life was even more unfulfilling, right? So filling this void of not finding fulfillment with shopping. And so when my husband and I were constantly fighting about it, I realized I had to do some real internal work to fix the actual problem, you know?
Right. And then when it comes to, as you mentioned, that was such a big factor because finance is a big factor. How did you both address these situations and these challenges coming in between you both? And I'm big on relationships, especially when it comes to advice and spreading
Sure.
that awareness. So people who might be struggling with that, do you have any advice for them?
It's just communication, because when you're the person, so I mean, look, there's so much I can say about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I grew up with a very strong father who wanted me to be independent and never rely on a woman. I mean, a woman, never rely on a man, to
Yeah.
be a strong, independent woman with my own money, my own everything. And so that created this like lack of acceptance of assistance and love, right?
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
worked through that for a while in my relationship before I got married. And so it's really funny that when I finally addressed it, I went like a complete 180 into the other end of the spectrum and just was like, okay, well, I'll just accept it all and spend all his money, right? Um, but again, I think the communication, you have to have communication. My husband
Yeah,
would sit down with me and be like, listen, you're insane. What's going on here? So
yeah,
his ability to communicate helped me to see myself and really understand that it was not just that I needed all these things, it was that I had something further that I needed to work on. And it was an internal thing. I was trying to fill a void.
yeah, absolutely. And it takes a lot of support from in a partnership to support one another and be teammates. So
Mhm.
how would you say you both supported one another, especially when it comes to these difficult challenges that you might be going through?
So, I mean, I think I went to therapy. It's kind of a solo thing, right?
Yeah,
I think you need independence from each other, and that in itself is more support than you would realize, right? If someone is not able to give you your own independence to work through things,
yeah,
big problem.
right, absolutely. And then how long have you been married, if you don't mind me
I've
asking?
only been married for 3 years. I've been with my
Okay.
husband for 8 years, though.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
funny. I actually like. I love that I have his name, and I would like to have children soon. I think we're kind of working our way towards that. I'm about to start IVF soon, but I think marriage is a silly thing. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm glad to be married.
Yeah.
But I think when you have a partner that is your partner, you don't necessarily need that. I'm very traditional, but I'll admit I think marriage is a little bit silly.
What do you mean by that exactly?
So I'm traditional in that I do believe in like the roles of husband and wives. I think in relationships, it's important to have a family, and I
Yeah.
like the idea and the concept behind being husband and wife and
Yeah.
having a family in that
Right.
way. But I think I also respect people who choose not to get married.
I agree with that
Yeah,
100%. I'm not married at the moment, but I think for the longest time I grew up thinking that marriage is the main aspect
sure,
of,
we all did. Right,
like this is how it's supposed to be, you're living this dream, but then when
right.
you end up getting into this relationship, then you realize it's a beautiful thing and it's nice to have a supporting partner. But it's so important to have that self-love to know that you will be okay on your own, as you mentioned, growing up financially, having that financial independence. And it's so crucial to have that.
Yeah, it's so interesting though because it's so double edged because it's like when we as women are so financially independent and we're so
Yeah.
independent in our own way, we are getting in our own way in a lot of ways, right? Like men don't really necessarily care about that from a woman,
That's a very
right?
good point.
A man doesn't really want a woman to be all about finances, but at the same time, they also don't want you spending all their money. So it's a very hard place to figure out, I think. But
Absolutely.
I do think we need more children in the
Yeah.
world, so
Yeah. Yeah.
shouldn't have a bunch of
So
babies out of wedlock.
talking a little bit about it's so interesting that you mentioned that because all my friends are married and have kids at the moment, and I'm pretty much the outlier. I'm 34, turning 35 this year. As a society, we grew up thinking, as I mentioned, need to get married. And what's the next step then? Get having kids. And there's so much pressure when it comes to a woman um, having to have kids at a certain age. But I feel like it's okay. It's okay if you don't want to have kids and you can figure it out along the way. Because I've had many conversations with people. They're like, what do you mean? You don't want to have kids? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah. But I didn't want to have kids really, or I didn't know if I wanted kids until I met my husband. So I think it's kind of like when you find someone
Yeah.
that you know or you feel like would be a great parent,
Yeah.
um,
That's
you
true.
just kind of know, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, okay, if I don't have children, I'll be devastated, right? So it's
Yeah.
very easy for that
Ah,
to trigger.
yeah.
Um, but it's all about the person. You know, I do think though that
True.
women, whether they want to admit it to themselves or not at a certain point, it's just nature. Like we
Yeah.
are motherly, we want to mother. And I think if we don't want to have kids and we don't end up having them, we'll end up doing something that is like a nurturing thing,
Yeah.
right? Look at you, you're teaching, like this
Yeah.
is, you're wanting to connect with people to talk about how to be more connected, right? So it's kind
Sure.
of a mothering thing.
Yeah. I would really like to dive into your daily practices. What are
Hmm.
the things that you do for yourself in order to stay sane as a person? Because we obviously all have ups and downs.
So mental health has been a really big thing for me my whole life. It's hard to talk about it because you don't want to like give too much information because people, when you have family that has mental health stuff and you talk about it, they're very offended as in a way where it feels like you are attacking them. But from a point of reference, I have had people in my life who have mental health issues. So I've always been interested in understanding how to have control over my mind, right? So I think that started for me at a really young age. I am not perfect. I have my moments. I have been incredibly depressed at times in my life. But I think part of who I am is allowing myself to go to those dark, depressed places and just like unravel and dive deep enough so that I can come out the other side a different person. Right. So I've had those low times that have ended up being the biggest improvement times of my life.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. It's hard to say. My practices change a lot, but I do know that it's about brain dumping and quieting the negative thoughts. Like that will never leave my life.
Yeah. And
Do you
how do
know
you
the brain dumping, the morning pages from the artist way? Have you ever heard of it?
No, I haven't. Tell us about it.
It's changed my life. So I was in a really dark place. I was trying to figure out what my purpose was in this world. I was looking for some meaning. And I was met with this same issue that I continue to be met with my whole life. It's like a drama with women, right? So I have issues with my mom, and it's
Yeah.
always this dramatic thing. And so um, I was looking for answers outside of myself. I saw therapists and shamans, and I was doing all kinds of things to like figure out what was wrong with me. And I
Yeah.
think what I finally realized was that it was not about external seeking or validation. No one was going to give me any answers, that actually I was completely fine. And that I needed to accept that I just wasn't like loving myself enough, and I wasn't giving myself enough credit for like the power that I actually have. And I started reading The Artist's Way, and it's an amazing journey of journaling, but it's so much more than that. Because when I say journaling, people always assume that it's, some weird woo-woo thing, but it's a process that is not meant for people who are just artists. It is a process that is meant for every human being. You cleanse out all the things you're holding yourself to, whether it's self-doubt, limiting beliefs, a bad moment that you forgot about when you were a child. And it
Yeah.
walks you through this 12-week journey of getting through that. And then you kind of adopt the habit of every single morning waking up and following the brain dumping, which is called the morning pages. And you love it. Like if I don't do it for a few days, I know I'm off.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very helpful to get rid of all the negative things.
I loved this quote that you have on your Instagram. It says, "While women tear each other down, men rise together. It's time to change the game. Let's rewrite the rules and lift each other up, creating a powerful collective of women leaders." And I love that so much because I am all about that. And I can relate with you because, and I've related with so many other women who feel like a lot of women around them are not as uplifting. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to surround yourself with that, absolutely. But then we tend to attract a lot of negativity in our life as well. So, how's that for you? And how much have you grown? Um,
It's so funny. I had a lot of difficulty with my mother. And I think I posted something recently where I talked about that I was just acutely aware of the fact that the women in my life from a young age just they weren't happy. But I think I wasn't able to identify that it was about them and not me
yeah.
until really only in my mid 30s, right? So I
Yeah.
kept being met with this same situation over and over again where these women around me were just not happy. And it was always something that I had to kind of take on and feel like, okay, what have I done here to
Right.
cause this for this person in this relationship? Why is this not working? But I
Yeah.
realized that I was like a people pleaser because I was so anxious and concerned with their well being because I
Yeah.
was acutely aware of this similar behavior style, that it was causing me problems. And I finally had to like admit it.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my internal work, I decided that I was going to write a book about this. And so I started working with a girl from LA who was on writer's strike. And
Okay.
she and it was about a year. So on top of like my external seeking, like the therapist, the shamans, all the stuff, I was also working with the screenwriter, and it was a double therapy because we went into all of the things that women are getting wrong with like what's happening in society and ultimately what was supposed to make us happy yet is not,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So during that whole process, I came to so many realizations, but then I was also approached by the Real Housewives of Miami to do casting.
Okay.
And so it's the funniest thing in the world because guess what that is? That's essentially exposing your whole life, right? And becoming incredibly vulnerable in that way. Your relationship is vulnerable,
Yeah.
everything. And it's all about women fighting with each other.
Yeah.
And so I was like, wait, this is what I want to call out. This is what I want to avoid. This is what I want to stop.
Yeah.
It's like the irony was unbelievable. But at the same time, I knew that it wasn't for me and I never heard back from them. And I'm kind of grateful
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm not looking for that. I want to counterbalance that. And I wish that shows like that would kind of change. And I don't think that they will change until the audience is no longer interested in fueling that kind of negativity between women.
Hmm.
So, but that is actually understanding that I was willing to put myself out there in that way, even doing the interview for the show, is
Yeah.
the reason that I started using social media. I said, okay, I got this book, I got this conversation I want to have. You are willing to interview for a reality television show, like do it. Just get
Yeah.
this show on the road here. So my podcast is not launched, but that is the basis behind it, is I want to talk about these women issues, how we're holding each other back, how
Yeah.
our inability to see ourselves and to prevent our own anger from going to the next woman is more of a problem than we like to admit.
Absolutely. And to be very vulnerable, I think for me, that has been the biggest struggle. I had a podcast with another beautiful women, and we were talking a little bit about not dimming our own light. And unfortunately, I had to do that a lot growing up. And then, as you mentioned, you start questioning yourself and you start really doubting on your own capabilities and doubting your own values and your own character. And I did that because I would think to myself, oh, maybe I need to change up my ways because I'm showing up a certain way and this person is not liking it. And then I had to realize, like, no, that's not what I'm supposed to do. I'm not being rude. I'm not being nasty. I'm not being mean. I'm being a really kind person, and that's who I am. They're not liking it. So that's not my issue.
Yeah. But you know, something that's interesting that I've learned throughout this journey too is that like when you're a light, when you are a kind human and like you mean well and you're authentically you and you speak your mind and you do actually want to lift other people up, especially women, people almost don't believe that that's real. Like they think that there's an ulterior motive or they're wondering what's wrong with you because it has become
Yeah.
so uncommon for people to be good in that way and
Yeah.
good natured that like we shine or we steer away from people who shine their lights brightly.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's absolutely true. And it's a journey that I'm still on, where I have great friends in my life, but then there's always one or two people that are questionable. And then I love my mom. My mom always tells me, she's like, "Why are you even friends with this person if you're feeling that kind of energy?"
Why don't you cut them out?
That's a really good question. I think
You will.
I will. I definitely will, but I think the reason why I don't cut certain people out or I'm kind of still observing them is because of that doubt, right? Like thinking to myself, hey, maybe I can be wrong. I can be wrong about this person. And you know what? It's the most challenging sometimes to cut someone out because you are compassionate and you see that they're very insecure. So that nurturing part of me is like, maybe I can help them, or maybe
I agree with you. And I don't want to say that you shouldn't give people chances, but one of the best things I ever did in my life was cut out every single person that was not good for me because not only was it powerful for me because I needed to do that for the first time, but it also gave me time to be alone. And I really needed that because that
yeah,
was like when you're put in these positions where you have people around you that you know aren't good and you know you need to get rid of them and
yeah,
you do it and you spend time alone and you research and you learn about yourself, like these are the moments of solitude that build you into the next version of you.
yeah,
And I overlooked all of that for way too long because I
yeah,
was so attached to the idea of having this little community, but you can't
yeah.
have a community if it's not real.
I agree 100%. And I will be so honest about this because I've kept this to myself for the longest time. And since we're having this conversation, I'm a very thin girl. I'm 5'8", skinny girl. And growing up, I would have a lot of women hate on that. And I would have a lot of women put me down. If it wasn't through words, it was through their actions, just because of the way I looked. And then it made me realize, I'm like, okay, because I have this compassion within me, I start doubting myself because then to myself, I'm like, hey, I don't understand how they feel because this has been me forever. And this is me, this is my body, this is who I am. I don't know how the other person feels. So then what can and then at that point, then I start doubting myself in the sense of cutting it out completely because to me, then I'm like, hey, they're insecure and they might be going through something when it comes to their own body or physical appearance. And that's why maybe they feel uncomfortable around me. But again, that's not my problem. So it's this battle that I'm fighting with myself.
Right. So it's great that you were able to even identify that. I mean, I spent my entire life until I was like 36 years old, not even understanding that I was being hated on because of my appearance
Yeah.
or because of just my ambition. Like it's very
Oh,
odd to have someone who is both attractive and intelligent and ambitious and kind,
for
right? There are more women in this world than we would care to admit that are going through this right now, right? Where they don't
sure.
even know how amazing they are. And the people around them are making them dim their light and they're making them suffer the consequences of their own brilliance, right? Or their own beauty. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that we need to have that conversation more and more where women need to actually admit that if there's shitty people around you, it's
Yeah.
probably because they're just really jealous of you or
Really
they're
generous. Yeah.
miserable and they can't accept how amazing you are. So don't let that affect you.
Yeah.
I don't
And
know. Let's start this conversation.
I love that. And, I was just listening to Oprah Winfrey the other day, and she mentions if there's even a hint of jealousy when it comes to a
Yes.
female friend, I'm sure you've seen that clip, get rid of them. And that's something that I've been following pretty much my entire life. I was really good about just getting rid of people. And like now my circle is like 5 to 7 girlfriends who I love so much. But there's always that one person that you're always confused about. But as you mentioned, it'll eventually fade as well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's crazy that like the jealousy thing I think would be something that we could identify so easily, but it's not. You know, it's like this little hidden snake that we can't
Yeah.
fully see, but we know we feel it,
We
you know?
feel it. We feel it. Yeah. And
We need to
recent
rely more on how we feel. Like
yeah,
that's something that we
yeah.
also overlook.
And one big thing I also learned is, and I don't know if you've experienced this, I'm sure you have. Uh I've had great friendships with women one-on-one, just
Hmm. Yeah.
wonderful relationship. And as soon as men are involved in the picture, completely shifts to the point where I'm like, hey, just yesterday when we were hanging out one on one, you were so uplifting. However, now that men are involved, you're putting me down. What did I do?
Sure, because they want to look, you know, good in front of men. I
Yeah.
honestly, I really haven't felt that. I guess I've always been a relationship girl. So in college, I had like a long-term relationship, and then,
Yeah.
and so if any girl ever were to try to disrespect me in front of my boyfriend or my husband, it would be like shocking. So I did
Yeah.
not actually deal with that so much.
And maybe you created these boundaries and you know how to create these boundaries. So maybe they were even
Relationships.
fearful to even behave that way in front of you guys.
Maybe,
But I've
maybe. And that's,
experienced
I guess if that's true, that's great because I never really understood how to set boundaries until now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's been a big factor when it comes to certain friendships for me. And that's hurt me a lot because it's a sign of betrayal where you're treating me very differently in a group setting because you're trying to one up me when it comes to men being around. Um,
Sure.
and it's something that stayed with me for so long to the point where I'm like, where are all the loyal, like amazing people out there? I mean, I love my friends at the moment. They're incredible, but I just wish that there were more people like that around.
More people with integrity. Like, don't you think that
Integrity.
we've kind of forgotten like what integrity actually even means?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think that's part of the conversation I want to have too with like my podcast is, I don't know how I have so much integrity. I was not actually raised to be like, there wasn't a rule book, but like
Yeah.
I always knew that I didn't like it when men spoke to me and their wives were not interested in a conversation with me. Like,
Yeah.
you're married, you're with your wife. Like, why are you talking to me? Like,
Right.
there's no reason for
You're
you to be
scared.
speaking to me.
So scared.
But things like that, like
Yeah.
nobody teaches you that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? It's either you got it or you don't. Like if you don't understand like that it's disrespectful to be looking at another woman's husband and like speaking to them and having this conversation, like you're off, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're missing a lot of integrity in this world, I think, in a lot of areas.
I think it is how you are brought up and how you are raised, I do have to say, because I'll use jealousy as an example. Growing up, my mom would, I've never saw a hint of jealousy when it comes to my mom towards other women. It's always been, she's very spiritual and I'm very similar to her. And that has never been an issue or a topic that we even discussed when it comes to my family, it's always been like, hey, wish well upon others, be grateful. And those are the conversations that I had growing up, which I've taken away with me into
Sure.
my adulthood. So
I
but yeah,
I
I don't
don't I don't have that experience. I was like the black sheep, and I don't think that anyone taught me to be the way I am. I have no idea. I just came out like this.
Wow, that's really
I don't know.
interesting. That's really, really interesting. Were you shaped, do you think you were shaped this way because of your surrounding, like this friend circle that you have? Are they all empowering women?
So, no, I think that I have not ever really been around empowering women, yet I am like the most empowering woman. So it's very odd. But I think I needed to learn those lessons, right? I think that's like the takeaway here is me understanding how much integrity I have, how
Yeah,
much I value integrity,
yeah.
and how much of a light I want to be for other people,
Hmm.
even though I never had that myself, right? So I think that this is all part of my journey of kind of understanding what I want to represent in this world. So
Yeah.
maybe I'll be changing who I'm surrounding myself with in the future because I'm definitely done with the not empowering women.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love that because I think because you didn't maybe receive it growing up, that you
Sure.
decided because of that, you were like, you know what, I want to be that shining light. And you're a happier person then as well. Because when you're uplifting others, I mean, the number one thing that I tell any friends who are struggling is if you, whenever we're praying or whenever we're wishing for something, it's always about us. But
Mm-hmm.
then what about genuinely in your heart having enough uh kindness to also wish upon others? If you hear someone is struggling when it comes to, like, let's say someone's not able to have a baby, and I have a friend who's sharing that with me, the number one thing I say out loud or I tell the person or when I hang up the phone is like, I hope that she's able to get pregnant. I hope she's able
Oh,
to have her baby. That's the biggest thing I wish for. And it multiplies and it comes back to you, and that's not necessarily what I want. I genuinely want to wish well, and I just wish that there were more people out there where it wasn't all about me. It was more about spreading the awareness and wanting other people to be happy.
sure. I agree. Listen,
Yeah,
we need a little hope in this world. I think,
yeah,
like I said before, I think it's almost alarming when someone actually thinks about other people and is like a kind person. Like alarming. We
yeah,
don't see that anymore. People are
yeah,
so selfish,
yeah,
and I think we need to change that a bit
yeah.
and be more. We need more hope in that regard.
Yeah, and it's really good that you also you made me think about it, where we're not used to that. And a lot
Right.
of people might even think that, oh, this person is being fake or this person is not being real. But then again, all that matters is that you're true to yourself. And
Sure.
we'll
I
see
think
that.
that fakeness, like you can only fake something for so long.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, can't you feel like I'll just use this as an example.
Yeah.
Do you remember during COVID when like everything on social media started to change and like everyone became an expert and a podcaster? It
Yeah.
was like in the beginning, it was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like I'm
Right.
at home, I'm by myself,
Yeah.
I'm seeing how everyone is figuring out a way to be more connected.
Hmm.
And then a year or two into it, it was like overwhelming. Like every time I saw someone, I felt like I was being pitched some new product or
Yeah.
some new course, and
Right.
you can see through it. Like you
Yeah.
feel that. So I
Absolutely.
don't know. You can only fake it for so long. And if you're not a good person, we're all eventually going to figure it out. Don't you
For
think?
sure. For sure. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think also as you're on this journey of working on yourself and personal development, it's not as difficult to read another person than at that point. Like one or two meetings, you get what they're about. Especially women, we can sense and we're so intuitive. Even through like just being on Zoom, I know you're a great person, you're very strong, so it's like I can feel that through the screen.
Right. But don't you think that's interesting too? Like we talk about intuition, and I
Yeah.
think it's almost like only 50% of us are actually admitting that women are intuitive. Like, do you think the entire world believes that women have more intuition than men?
No, I don't think so.
Right. It's like a very small group of people who even talk about intuition, don't you
Yeah,
think?
yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of people don't believe, a lot of people are not maybe as spiritual and they don't believe in when it comes to
But
intuition because
don't you
they're
think
very
that's an
logic
interesting
based.
thing? Like, is being intuitive really spiritual?
That's a good point.
I think it's
No,
just like what we're built with.
we're built with it, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't believe in intuition because, as I mentioned, it's not logic based, it's not factual, it's more of a feeling that you feel within your heart. So anytime when it comes to feelings, people are questioning. Is it
Right.
even real? Is this true? Is this false? And I'm big on it, but I'm big on it because I've had these experiences in my life, and that's my belief system. It might
Right.
not be necessarily true for someone else.
I just believe that feelings are more like they're more powerful than logic.
I
I think
agree.
that there's so much out there that is unspoken and that we have somehow forgotten the power of feelings and emotion and intuitively knowing something before there are facts and logic to be studied. Like,
Yeah.
I wish we could flip that around somehow.
I agree. Like every time I go to the ocean, I look at its vastness and I'm just like, there's so many animals that we have like, there's so many
Sure.
animals. We have no idea about the universe. Like we're just this speck. So, and then when I have that awareness, all of a sudden all the issues and the problems that I have in my life kind of disappear because I'm like, you know what, there's a bigger purpose and we're just kind of like puppets, right? We're not we're just kind of going with the flow. And as soon as you realize that life is not forever and
Mhm.
that we have this limited time, the end goal is what? It's happiness. We all
Sure.
want to just be happy. And we're going to go through the suffering. It's going to happen. So whatever, so up till the suffering happens, let's just be happy. And then when the suffering does take place, then we know how to handle it and you appreciate the good times and the bad times,
Sure. I
you
agree.
know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So last but not the least, I wanted to ask you one big major advice that you have for your younger self.
I have so many. This is all for my younger self. Actually, I would say prior versions of myself. Because it's funny, I didn't, let's say, wake up until I was turning 36 years old. And
Yeah,
it's funny, I recently heard that like 36 is this weird number where when you
interesting.
turn 36, like everything kind of shifts for you as a
Uh,
woman.
okay.
Um, and it's true. I don't know what happened. It was actually on my birthday, and I had a birthday party, and I looked around and I saw all the people that were there, and I said to myself, what am I doing here with these people? What is going on? I could see like everyone for who they really were, everyone
Right.
for their intention. It was just this bizarre moment in my life. And
Interesting.
I started to kind of shift everything. I guess I would say if it were one thing I could say to my prior self, it would be recognize your power.
Yeah.
Because I think it's when we walk through life with like a kind heart, it's really hard to see what we're actually made of and our own value.
Yeah.
And I think the moment that I flipped that, everything changed for
Yeah.
me.
That's
Even just internally.
Yeah, no, that really resonates with me. And I think that we focus on what the strengths that we might not have. We
Way
don't
too much.
we focus a lot on that versus what we do have. Because we
Sure.
want that external validation, right? We do crave that to a certain extent. But then we have to remember and check ourselves and understand that it's all within.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Such a good conversation. I loved it. And thank you so much for showing up.
Thank you for having me. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
of course.